Hello, welcome to the Winning Balance podcast. Today we are met with Alex Bean. Thanks for jumping on, dude.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
I feel shocked that Alex is even here right now. He's got a cool story.
I
So
wouldn't be that shocked, but yeah, it should be a good time.
no, I respect what you've built. I respect who you are, at least from the outside looking in. It looks like you're doing amazing things, and you've done amazing things in the business world, and you still hold your family to a high regard. And that's what I respect. So I have to ask you, you're a Seattle sports fan?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so you saw the Sonics news?
Yeah, you don't understand. So I have two sons, 11 and 8. My 11-year-old is like my mini-me. We're both like, he is into sports, like in. He watched 150 Mariners games last year.
I'm a diehard Mariners fan
And so
too, by the way.
we have 2026. We went to the Super Bowl. The Mariners are favored to go to the World Series. And the Sonics are coming back. I was like, son, like it took me 40 years to get some of this. So he's we're loving it. We're having a good time.
Yeah, honestly, I say this is one of the best years of my life, and Seattle sports has a big chunk of that. So it's
kind of crazy, but yeah,
wild. 2028, is that what they're saying?
Yeah, they'll get approved. The Sonics will get approved soon, and then it would be 2028.
Okay.
Yeah.
I used to Rashard Lewis, Luke Ridnour, Ray Allen, all those guys.
You're younger than me because
Yeah.
I'm a Sean Kemp. I grew up with Sean Kemp and Gary Payton, and I mean it's like I grew up with Griffey and Sean Kemp and Gary Payton. It's like those are my idols growing up. So
Those are just the OGs.
Our dog's name is Griffey.
Really?
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, those are the OGs in my head, just the highlights. But I grew up Seattle, playing football and basketball, so those teams are a big part of my life. So cool. Awesome. Little tidbit. But Alex, I'd love to start. Usually, how we do these podcasts, I love to hear about your career, like wherever you feel like it started in your eyes, and then, I mean, we could speed through the beginning part because I think Divvy and what you're doing now is a lot of that content there. But I'd love for you to spruce in stories about the family, how that went with your wife.
Yeah, no, I can actually, where it starts, we'll skip some stuff for sure, but I remember we got married our senior year of college, and I got a job at LogoWorks, which we were selling logos. And
here in Utah?
Yeah, here in Utah. And it was the end of the year, and ultimately he was like, all right, we have this job. It was a good college job. And, like, what are we going to do? And this was 2008, so it was the middle of, like, the recession. So a lot of people that were hiring were no longer hiring, and it's kind of a crazy time. And I remember I told my wife, I was like, I got to quit this job so I can go find a real job. And she was like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And she let me, right? So this is going to set a pattern for, ultimately what our marriage, I hope is that it's like times where she has to trust me and I have to trust her, and she plays her role and I play my role, and we're constantly helping each other out. But yeah, I quit that job, and it took me a little while, a couple, 2 or 3 months before I found another full-time job. And I did some odds and ends to make some money, but it was like that happened. Then I took my first job out of college, which was selling TV ads in Seattle, actually, for Channel 7. And same thing. I was there for a couple of years, had a lot of success, for a couple of years. And literally I remember, so I was getting paid, again, this is 20 years ago. I think I was getting paid like 45 grand, 55 maybe. And she was getting paid like 40 grand. And we wanted to have a baby. We've been married for a couple of years, and we're like, all right, let's do the family thing. And we were excited about it. And same pattern. I was like, well, she wants to be a stay-at-home mom. But I wasn't making enough at the time to do anything with that. And it was like, once we committed, it was like, we're having a baby, we'll figure it out. We had the baby, got pregnant. She was quitting her job. As she quit her job and we had the baby, I basically got a raise to like 85 grand. So I replaced, like, the number was like, I replaced her exact salary. And it was just one of those, like, constant reminder, one, that I had a wife that was willing to take risk with me, which is a big part in some of the success that we've had. And also, a lot of times you just have to take a step and be like, hey, I know it doesn't make logical sense, or I know we don't have all the answers, but we want a family, and that's we knew we did. And so it was like, well, let's do it. And then we figured it out after.
That's amazing. And that was in Seattle. You were still living in Seattle.
Yeah, we're living outside of Seattle. Yeah.
So I had a similar, when I was doing my research on you, Alex, I was like, oh, he's from the Seattle area. That's all I knew at the time. And you brought your wife to Seattle for a little bit and came back. And that's exactly what I did.
Okay.
I met my wife at UVU, moved back to the Seattle area. We were Snohomish, then Kirkland. Lasted there for like 2.5 years. And my wife's like, I need my family. We planted roots here.
We were a little different, actually. We were there for 9 years, and I wanted to come back to Utah.
Really?
She didn't.
Even though she was from here.
Yeah.
Interesting.
She really became her own in Seattle and was able to just become the person she wanted to become and not have to deal with any of the past. And so she loved Seattle. My family was all up there. I wanted to come back to Utah to get into tech. And so like my career took some shifts. I did a lot of different things in my 20s. Lots of things just to like learn and challenge and push. Like I wasn't making a ton of money. And eventually I was like, hey, Megs, like I want to get involved in tech, and Utah has a very approachable tech scene is the way I would describe it. And so it was another thing where it was like, you sure? And I'm like, yeah. So I quit a job. I moved to Utah. 3 months later, my partner, Blake Murray, approached me about what became Divvy. And we took the risk to move to Utah. 3 months later, we started talking about Divvy. And about probably 4 or 5 months later, we actually quit our job to start this company. It's the exact same conversation as before, which was like, we started to make a lot more money, financially very secure, feeling really good. And I was like, hey, I'm gonna quit and take an 80% pay cut to go do this thing. And she's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I think I'm sure. And, we had 2 kids at the time. No, we just had a 3rd kid at the time. And
how old were you at that time?
10 years ago, 32.
32.
Yeah, 31, 32. So we'd had our 3rd kid, and it was a big risk, big change. And she was like, all right. Like, I'm basically kind of like, if this is what you want to do, this is your side of the fence. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So we kept our expenses low and went for it. And, the rest we can get into. But again, like every single time there's been a major change. And I've seen this a lot, actually, where there's a lot of guys specifically that like really want to take the risk or to do a certain thing. And if you and your spouse aren't aligned, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Either can't do it or it divides the family and, a divorce happens. But Megan's let me take a handful of risks, which I appreciate.
And is that, I'd love to dive into that conversation even more. Is that literally like as simple as that? When you go to Megan, your wife, and talk to her about these risks, she has enough trust that so
she wants to be a stay-at-home mom. She's capable of working, but she likes it.
Yeah.
She loves her mom was a single mom who worked her whole life. And so it was her dream to not have to work and to be able to take care of the kids. And I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and, we've had some success in our family, which we can talk about the breakage there, because there's some stories on, the divide between business and family and where the break points can be.
Yeah.
But, over time, just in our relationship, it was like, okay, she trusted that I would work hard. She trusted that I could at least meet like the basic needs. But I also trusted her, this sounds funny, but she was really good at budgeting and like not spending too much, which allowed us freedom to take risks. So like she needed to commit to, okay, well then you can spend this much, but not that much. And I can save some money now so we can go take that risk later. And it forced us both to say, do we trust each other? Because if one of us doesn't do our end of the bargain, meaning if I don't work hard and actually do the thing, I put ourselves in a really bad situation. And if you don't do your side of the bargain, which is only spend a certain amount and, whatnot. Yeah, and it wasn't like we were like on food stamps, but, it's like you're buying used things, some things new, but, it's a lot of it's like, okay, you use it for multiple kids. And, it just wasn't as fancy as obviously some of the moms would want. And so, yeah, we created that connection in our marriage, which, really fortunate to have, where she began to trust me to be like, if Alex is going to put his mind to something and actually commit to it, he can do it. But I have to support him and commit to that. I'll give you like a really good example of this. So this isn't like marriage advice. This is just what we did in our marriage. So, when we would have kids, kid would wake up in the middle of the night. And I would say 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, Megan would get up with the kid. And occasionally, obviously, if it was like, it was just so long. I would replace. I'm happy to help. But her mindset was, he's waking up at 7 to go to work all day, and he's going to work and I was working 10 to 12 hours a day. So she's like, this is my job. I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night. I've got that. But he's going to wake up, and he better go to work and better work his freaking butt off. And because she wasn't like, well, I need your help. And we weren't dragging each other down, right? She wasn't like, I need you up at night with the kid and being equal time. And I'm not saying that that's not what some people can decide to do. I'm saying for us, that worked, where I was able to save a lot of energy for like, I will work. And obviously I would come home, and I can get into like my schedule, but I would come home and make sure that I was the best father I could be. But there were things like that where Megan was like, I got this if you got that. And we're like, all right, let's go.
I love that.
Yeah.
And when you went full time into Divvy, there was revenue that
No.
there was no revenue?
No.
You sunk the ships, went all in.
Technically we got investment, so we were able to pay ourselves.
I see. That's where that came from. Okay.
But I took an 80% pay cut. Yeah. So we had money to cover the mortgage and some money obviously for like food, but not much else. Yeah. And we'd saved up a little bit, so we had some savings, but basically there was this like threshold. We're like, okay, that, and we pay our taxes and the other donations we make, and yeah. And Megan's like, I can live off of that. I'm like, great.
That's amazing.
Let's do that.
See, and that's I used to think of myself as an entrepreneur being in real estate, and the more interviews that I've had with people like you and other entrepreneurs, I realized that I'm like, I'll call myself a business owner. Like that's about the extent, because the sink the ships model in my head just does not seem to fit.
Yeah.
Whereas true entrepreneurship means a whole lot more sacrifice, a whole lot different risk tolerance.
Yeah. And like we can get into Divvy and some of the success we had, but I tell people all the time, I said, look, the thing I will say, like I give credit to a lot of other people, because you don't build Divvy by yourself.
Yeah.
Amazing people. But I'm like, I look back on it, I'm like, man, but Megan and I did take the risk. And there's a lot of people that didn't or didn't want to, or, like I remember, I won't name names obviously, but there's people early on where we didn't have the cash we needed, and we said, hey, we'll give you more equity if you take less cash. So cash. And basically they would go home and talk to their spouse, and their spouse would say no. And I get it. I totally get it, because there's a lot of risk, and it ended up being tens of millions of dollars that they said no to because they weren't, as a collective, willing to take that risk. And again, it's personality driven, but for us, for me specifically, I'm a risky person by nature.
Yeah.
If I really am convicted on something, I'm like, hey, then let's burn the boats and let's go for it. So
I love that. I'm probably saying the saying wrong. What did I say? Burn the ships or
whatever.
Burn
It's all the same.
Yeah. But I mean,
burn the boats, I think, is the common phrase.
I'm always so close. That's what my wife says. I make up my own words like Dr. Seuss, but that's a good transition to Alex into like true entrepreneurship in my eyes, at least, and that the risk associated with that, the sink or swim mentality. I'd love to hear how that shows up going home to your kids, and when there's uncertainty consistently, right? And the roller coaster is always flowing. How do you stay present? How do you show up?
Yeah. Okay. A few things I want to cover here for sure. The thing I started to realize as you get into entrepreneurship, because there was days you would, even early, I'd come home and I'd like look at Megan. I'd be like, we have done it. Like I don't know how to tell you this, but this is $1 billion company. We are rich. Like I wouldn't say that, but I'm like, we've freaking did it. And 2 days later, you'd go home and be like, it's over. Like X thing happened, and and it was just like the roller coaster of it all is pretty aggressive. And so I started to get in. This is actually something my high school coach used to teach me, and it stayed with me, which is this concept of things are never as good as they seem, and they're never as bad as they seem. And in order for you to be a true entrepreneur, you have to realize that, which is when things are high, just take the edge down, take it down a notch, because it's not as good as you think. There's a hurdle right around the corner. So just celebrate, but like with an understanding of it's not over. And then when it's really bad, and there are times, which I'll share one story in a second, like when they're really bad, you have to be like, hold on, I have to have hope as one of the leaders of this company, or no one's going to have hope. And there was a lot of times where you have these pits in your stomach because it's not just like a regular job. I mean, it's like you're responsible for everyone. You're on this mission. Everyone's working tons of hours. It's all this stuff. You've given up all your sacrifices, pay. You're going for it. And to come home from those highs and lows, and then it's almost like this threshold of when you walk into the house. The kids don't know if you had a great day or a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know if you're rich or if you're poor, if you're successful, if you're a loser. It's funny. I watch this with my kids now. Like, they don't know if their dad is super successful or just, or nobody. Like, you could be Tom Cruise or whatever, and they don't know. They just see you as dad.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to almost like learn to just separate those emotions and go through like a filter as you come home and be like, hold on. So what was great about it to me is when you had really bad days, and I'll give you an example of this, the kids didn't know it was a bad day and they'd save you, right? And what I mean by that is this is later on into Divi, COVID hit. COVID for us, it was bad for everyone, but the thing that was really bad for us is we had three things. One, our investors owed us $100 million at the end of March in 2020. And 2 weeks prior, a week prior, we went into quarantine and that was gone. So they were supposed to give us the money and then they backed out. Second thing is all of our investors, it wasn't like, oh, we'd lose some clients, bummer, or we couldn't do it. It's like, no. We weren't just going to lose a couple $100 a month. They had $100,000 credit lines out with us. So if they decided not to pay, we're just out. And then we had banks who were looking at 2008 and looking at 2020 and saying, hey, we can shut this down at any time. So 24/7, the banks could have just said, hey, we're getting rid of all your credit lines. So we had these three huge points that were like, could take down the business at any time. So there was like this 2-3 week period when COVID was happening and no one knew what was going on in the world. But for us specifically, we're just internalizing it in our business structure. It was like soul suckingly stressful to the point of, I remember, we were talking, there was like 4 or 5 of us that would always go into the office because we were trying to figure this stuff out, even in quarantine. And I remember like having to go to another room and I broke down crying because I was like, I don't know how to process this. And I don't get that stressed very often. I can handle a decent amount of stress. Just the weight of it was so crushing. I didn't know how to get out. And I kind of collected myself and came back into the meeting room, and our CFO, Blakely, looked at me and said, Alex, can I give you a hug? Because he was going through the same thing. And like, how often does that happen in a business environment, right? Where like the emotions of it, like, so Blakely and I, we just hugged it out, and it was just like, holy cow, like you could feel this physical weight. So that day, and I'm sure I told my wife I was having, a lot was going on or whatever, but I came home that day, and there was a banner. I parked my car in the garage, and there was a banner as you go inside of in the mudroom that was basically like, "We love you, Dad." And the kids had, my kids were little, and they're little drawings. They're probably about 6 and 4 and 2 or whatever. And so like you come home and you walk through this banner, and you just realize like, oh my gosh, this is what I needed.
Yeah.
A, this is what I'm doing this all for. B, there's way more to life than just this job. Like, if it goes under, it goes under. I can look these kids in the eye and be like, let's go do something else, And I remember that was like one of those things where my kids, as young as they were, saved me because they gave me this strength of like, oh, that's comfort, that's love, that's what matters. So that's one of the stories from Divi and family.
I love it. That hits home to me, especially like my first baby. She's 16 months old, 17 months now, and just like the happiest baby ever, luckily. And the amount of rough, I mean, even as a business owner, I still have rough days and uncertainty and like no idea if, I still have payroll I got to hit. And so there's scary days, but coming home to my baby is just like seeing that smile resets everything.
It's funny when you talk about some of this stuff, because I have friends that are older and don't have kids, or actually some of my best friends from high school just had their first kid at like 40, 41. And it's kind of fun to watch them go through it. And I'm like, I don't know how to explain it to other people that don't have kids. I'm just like, but there's a connective tissue between a parent and a child that you don't understand. And when you first have a child, see them be born, realize you're responsible for them, hold their little hands, and just all the stages that go up to it. If you fully embrace that, you realize, oh, that's the meaning to life. Like that's the thing that makes me feel things, and by the way, good and bad, because
Yeah.
kids can also be a freaking nightmare, and, really hard. But that's the challenge of life, and those are the things. It's not the only thing in life, because obviously I take a lot of pride in work, and many other people do. But there's a connective tissue with kids and with a good family relationship that is just incredible.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I'd say that I am in a position right now that I'm figuring things out, faith, spiritual, that side of my life. But I've like, when my baby was born, there was never like a doubt of a higher power, because it was that biology that I felt as soon as I held her. It literally felt like Avatar, the movie where they like tie this connection, and I literally was just like bonded to this baby for the rest of my life, and I could feel that, and the protectiveness, and like the automatic love that was just inherited that I've never felt in my life. It's super, super powerful feeling. But going back to that example during the COVID days, how long did that season last?
I would call it a month of like, we didn't know what was going on. Then another month of like, well, let's pivot, let's try this other thing. And then PPP, do you remember the PPP program? So we were doing a lot there, and then probably within 3 months we were back to like hitting record-breaking numbers. We had to do a big layoff, which sucked because the investors backed out. But allowed us to reset a lot of stuff, and as we kind of came back and businesses started to spend again and everything, we were able to get out of it quicker than I think we ever would have guessed. But yeah, so it was really scary, really deep for 1 to 3 months.
And kind of a tangent question on that, because you're kind of on the outside now, fast forwarding, you're on the investment side, right? And seeing the amount of spend during COVID from the government, and fast forwarding today, like what's your anticipation as what's going to happen, right? Like I feel like we maybe haven't felt what we should have felt during COVID, and there was some like government intervention that probably needed to happen, but we haven't felt.
I think it's a great economist question.
Yes, yeah. But as an investor, you got to.
Yeah, you do, but also you don't invest in. You can't invest in. Hey, is there going to be a back wave of a catch up from what happened in COVID? Yeah, but we're talking about 10-year investments. Yeah. So like ultimately you can never time it. Is there going to be a war? Is there not going to be a war? Is there going to be a crisis? Is there not going to be a crisis? Like some of the best companies in the world came through the .com, came through 2008, so you're looking, when we invest, the lens of which we're looking is obviously founders and product market fit and scale. You can't predict macro environments. So, I could get into what I think is possible. And I think that there's bull and bear cases, right? Like I very much buy into the world of like, well, actually, no, we're continuing to build and innovate in America to an extent that it's going to allow us to produce such a significant GDP that people continue to give us, debt, and it doesn't matter. But then there's obviously bear cases where it's very different. But having lived through the .com and the real estate crisis, it's like, but it also, you come out of the crisis like almost every time. This, going back to, I said, from a family of entrepreneurs, and my great grandpa has this autobiography, and he had a lot of success doing retail, like grocery stores and like Walgreens and these hardware type stores up in the Northwest. And one of the things I read about in his book was like in the Depression. He was like an executive at Safeway during the Depression. And the question was essentially, was he going to put money away or like try to, like become the squirrel and hoard the nuts? And he's like, if you believe in America, you should bet on America. And so his point was, we'll get out of it. If you believe in the future of our country, then we will get out of it. And whether it lasts 2 years, 5 years, or 10, we'll get out of it, and you're going to go to heights you've never seen before. And so, that's, I try to take that optimism. I know it's not always realistic, but I also think most of the crises we've had in the last 100 years, they don't last forever. They'll last for a period of time, and then you go.
Yeah.
On that. So.
I love that lens. And honestly, from like the real estate lens, my 2 cents, and I practice this, is like timing the market. You're always going to get behind, right? So if you're always waiting for the perfect time, how many opportunities pass? And
Yeah.
so I subscribe to that for sure. I'd love to dive into the acquisition season itself and post acquisition. Especially, like, I'm sure things are racing in your head. Well, maybe not racing, but like picturing a life, envisioning a life with your family as it's happening.
There's a few things I can cover in this that come to my mind. So, one thing was, like, it wasn't in the acquisition yet, but we were having more success. So I wouldn't say it was inevitable, and it's never inevitable until it's in the bank account, but that's a different story. Starting to realize, like, that picture of like, oh, what's life going to change if we have some money in the bank account? And I was on an airplane to New York, and it's what, 4.5 hour flight. So I had some time, and I was like, all right, hold on. So I threw my headphones on. I listened to musical scores. So I was like, cranking out Hans Zimmer or something. I opened up a spreadsheet. I basically wrote down column one, and I've called it since the happiness audit. But here's what I did. So for column one, I just said, I'm going to write down everything that makes me happy. Just because the underlying question I had is, will money make me happier? Can money buy happiness? Right? Like, we've heard that phrase. So, all right, let's just go through it. So I started writing down everything I could think of. And it's everything from, like, throwing a ball with my boy, eating an ice cream cone, going on a date with my wife, like playing this sport, whatever. Seahawks doing awesome. Doesn't matter. Like, anything I could just think of, they're like, yeah, that brings me, like, happiness. Wrote it down. It was like 183 things. So I was like, all right, column two. How happy does it make me out of, like, 10, right? Some things were like 3 or 4, some things 6 or 7, some things, 9 or 10. And I was like, all right, cool. And then I said, okay, well, how long does that happiness last? Okay, well, column 3, I'd say, well, eating an ice cream cone. It's short. Like, I actually love ice cream, but usually right when you're done, you're like, I shouldn't have eaten that. Too much sugar, or like the feeling's gone. So it's like, well, that's short. Okay. But other things like going on a trip with your kids, like, it builds these memories that compound for longer and whatever. So it's like, okay. So short, medium, long, I write that down. The last thing I wrote down was, how much did it cost? So independently, just, well, how much does it cost to do? Go through. And when I was done, I was able to, compile the document and run filters and say, what did I just learn? And for me, the thing that was striking is someone who's chased a lot of success his whole life, and I still do, and I'm happy to, like, I'm not anti-success or anti-money at all, and we can go into why. But the perspective of it changed, because as I looked at, like, my top 20 things, every one of them was either free or cheap. Throwing a ball, going on a walk, taking my dog out, all these little things. And there are some things in my life that cost more, totally. But it was one of those, like, just kind of reality checks for me of like, oh, okay, whether or not Divvy sells or doesn't sell, if it sells for this much or for that much, or if I make this much or that much, wasn't actually going to change my happiness level. So it reminded me, to keep working on what happiness is now as we're going for this other level of success. But whether or not that comes doesn't define who I am, and doesn't define the happiness that I am able to achieve. And I found that to be a pretty helpful framework to just think through, like, well, why are you trying to achieve success? And what's the point and goal of the success? And so that helped me a lot.
I love that.
Let me spin it to the other side, which is the success part, right? Like, why do you do what you do? Why do you do real estate? Why are you a business owner, as you said?
The beginning was financial freedom, but now I like the building process of, like, pushing myself.
Financial freedom for a second. Let's just go to that. Well, why? Why do you want financial freedom?
I think, well, it's funny. I used to say that I can spend as much time with my family as I wanted to.
Okay. I've said the same thing.
Now, I used to say by the time my first is in T-ball, I want to not have to work.
Okay.
And now I know that if I did not work, I would become like a vegetable. I just would hate it. So now, remind me of the question, why do I do it?
Yeah, like, why do you, okay, so you've realized some of these things, which I'm going to cover with my opinion too, but So now why do you do it? Why do you keep pushing yourself?
I genuinely like the process of building something, and I have a lot of other screaming whys that are maybe not
Okay.
so healthy, of like proving people in my life prior that I like am capable of
Okay.
building something, and maybe more ego, pride
Sure.
driven
Yeah.
aspects of it.
Okay.
But
Um, so it's funny. If I said to you, you don't have to give me a number. If I said to you, what's the number, like at your mountaintop? Do you have like this goal of like, I'm trying to get to a certain amount?
my
When
pa-
is enough is enough?
yeah, my passive income goal is 25K a month.
Okay.
That's what I've always said.
Cool. Okay. So whatever the number is, it doesn't matter, like in terms of what I'm going to talk about. And I remember this conversation because like my partner and I were driving and he asked me the same question and I was like, oh, here's my number. And I remember thinking, that's my number of if I hit that number, all of my problems are solved. I can unlimited time with my family, do all the fun things I want. So Divvy sells. This is early June of 2021. And money hits the bank account. And it's higher than that number that I said to my partner back in the day. So achieved my goal. First couple months was summer, and actually it was really great. Honeymoon period for sure, meaning just was able to like detox, kind of catch up and let my heart rate settle and live without some of the stresses that I had and spend time with the kids, go on some trips with them and see their family and do some fun stuff. And went on a trip with Megan to Africa. That was super fun. But around October, the kids are back in school, my friends are at work, and I'm doing these things like I'm like playing piano because that was like something I always wanted to learn. And I literally was taking like these sleight of hand magic card lessons because I thought that would be kind of fun to learn. And like I was busy, but without purpose. And I remember, so what happened is it was October and we're in bed and, you know, we're just like watching whatever show before we go to sleep. And I said to Megan, I said, I've got to tell you something. And it's going to sound crazy, but I need to like say this. And I said, I'm jealous of my friends in the rat race. She's like, what are you talking about? Because obviously it's an insane statement. And when I say this story, I want people to know, like, I understand this is the world's tiniest violin and no one cares about the person with money and their problems. But I'm just going to tell you what the problems were. And I remember being like, no, but when you have to wake up every day, there's a certain motivation to like, I got to go hunt, I got to go kill, I got to put food on the table. And you come home and you have these endorphins of like, I worked, I grinded, I pushed, and I did it for my kids and for my wife. And like, whew. And it's a cycle you can rely on for motivation to keep you going. And I really needed that motivation for a long time. And so when I eventually realized I was kind of worthless, I phrased that I wasn't earning my sleep. It was just kind of existing.
Yeah.
And I was playing golf and eating lunch, the things I love to do, but I wasn't finding the same joy in them because it wasn't a relief from the stress. It was just the only thing I did. And I just started to realize like, man, if I don't have a purpose of building, I will, you said it, turn into a vegetable.
Yeah.
And I was turning into it. I was just feeling that. And it's funny because you're like, oh, I'm just going to do my hobbies and spend time with my kids. And what I have found, and not, everyone's a little different, but over time, I think it's a very similar stretch, is like, it's really great. But then pretty quickly, it's like a whole reset. And you have to be like, wait a minute. I need a new mountain to climb. I need a new purpose. I need to reset everything. And it took me a little while to do it, but it was kind of a shocking feeling at first because a lot of people think like, oh man, grass is greener. That person, you know, everything is solved in his life. And a lot of things were great, but there's also other things like it was the hardest year of Megan and I's marriage was the year that we sold Divvy. Maybe the first year that year. So let's say they're competing, but people will be like, why? And I'm like, well, what do you do when money drops into your bank account? How do you spend it? And the answer is I wanted to spend it. Megan didn't want to spend it. So immediately we're already like, we're different. And what's crazy about that is at the time we'd spent 14, 15 years of marriage. We had aligned on so many things.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we have a whole new thing. And it's like, well, we're not aligned on this thing. I thought we wanted a cabin. And she's like, I don't want a cabin. And I'm like, well, why not? And she's like, because I don't want it. And I'm like, well, I want it. And then all of a sudden we're not like hating each other, but we're like, geez, why doesn't she see it my way? And she's thinking, why don't I see it her way? And so stuff like that was just like kind of fascinating to go through.
How long did that season last?
Took 2 seasons you're asking. One is like for me to find purpose again from when we sold was around 8 months. I started Tandem and
It's
it
pretty
gave
quick.
me, maybe it was closer to 10 months, but it was just shy of a year. And I started to be like, okay, let's start this process. Let's build another business. And it wasn't the same level of stress as Divvy, but it was something to build and to do and to give back to local Utah founders. So one, that was a little shy of a year. And then for Megan and I, yeah, I would say a solid year, maybe a little longer of like getting in this rhythm of like what this new reality means and how do we keep it away from the kids, but also maybe do some fun things with the kids. But like, what's the balance of all that? And how do we manage personal relationships and a lot of the things that come with this type of stuff? So yeah, that's taken a little while for us to kind of get on the same page and go through some of those experiences together.
Yeah. Well, good for you on getting through that. I am all too familiar with our first, I'd say 2 years of marriage were absolutely wild. Doing a live-in flip, not having a kitchen for 4 months, moving to Seattle, like new jobs, new environment, no social life, just like throwing it all at the same time and thinking we were great after that. We got through it, had 2 years, then had a baby, had to relearn this new phase of life. So all too familiar there. Question for you, Alex, too. Part of this is selfish and understanding my phase of life or maybe a future phase of life. And I'll get to that point next, but I'd love to hear your side of this, see if you can articulate it. But when have this money in your bank account, you have this flexibility and you really can say, I can do whatever I want on this next chapter in this business. How do you discover that next route? Because I mean, 8-10 months sound like super quick to figure out the next phase.
For me, it was I always forget it's like Myers-Briggs. I can't remember the name of the test, but there's a test for business that basically evaluates you, and the main question it's asking is what takes away your energy and what gives you energy. So for me, like reading a legal document is soul sucking. I hate it. Like I have a meeting after this with a lawyer who's my friend actually, but a lawyer to like do a document. I'm like, dude, this better be 2 seconds. Whereas other stuff like brainstorming and talking about product market fit and vision, like I would do it through the night for free. I love it. So I kind of realized what I liked. And then I felt like I had been given such a good opportunity here in Utah and had such a good experience. And I'm like, well, if I can help other people have a similar experience here in Utah, then great. Let's do this. So for me, starting Tandem was, I don't want to say a no-brainer, but it was a no-brainer in the sense of like, all right, I get to work with founders and I get to give them some of my playbook and it gives me something to build. Let's go. So I was lucky enough to find something that gave me a little bit of purpose, but I would use the measurement of if you find yourself in that position, what do you love to do? And what do you think brings some value to other people? And you can usually find something there. When your first goal isn't how do we make tons of money, it's just different filters that allow you to do different things. And and the other thing is I've spent some time in the nonprofit space. Like we have a nonprofit now, and I can talk a little bit about that. I don't love nonprofit per se. I don't want to spend every day living in a nonprofit world talking about nonprofit. But so for me, that wasn't my path. But some people want to go do that. Some people want to go coach. Some people want to do whatever. I think just find out where you think you add value and what brings you energy, and you'll start to carve out another purpose.
I love it. And the reason that I kind of 2 parts to this, I've always wanted to build a business that I can sell. Like right now have a lifestyle business that's great. It funnels into investments that help bring peace of mind to my financial picture and some more certainty there. But I've always had this like burning desire to build equity in a business. I know how to build it in real estate. I've had this burning desire to have, and I don't know if that is like, it probably is ego driven maybe of just like building something that I can exit. But I mean, I haven't really pinned that.
By the way, I don't just when people say the word ego, greed, or pride, they're thinking, oh, that's a really negative thing. And largely it is. But like, it's also what you're saying is, but I want to see if I can do it.
Yeah,
To challenge
100%.
yourself. I
Yeah.
want to see if I can build something where there's equity value. Someone else wants to pay for the value of what I've created. So it's not always like this negative thing. I mean, you
Yeah.
want to build a company that has equity value for you and the other shareholders. Like, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to pin it. I've wanted to do that forever, and I feel like I am really close to having the confidence. And I think that's going back to like the business owner in me is once my rentals can pay for my mortgage maybe and some expenses, then I feel like I really have no excuse at this point to go chase it. But then my worry, and this is what I like would love your 2 cents on, is maybe I don't have that hunger that pairs with that, right? So I mean, I'd love for you to pick that apart, and if you were in my shoes, what you'd recommend.
It's really hard for someone to manufacture hunger. So if you live a really comfortable life and you have good cash flow and you have rental properties paying for things and your wife's living a certain lifestyle and you're living a certain lifestyle, I've found that it's extremely hard to change that lifestyle. And, for people that have been saving, I'm not saying this is you, I'm just for people that are not taking risks, but they're more of safe. It gets hard to flip that switch. And by the way, you might not flip the switch and you need to come to grips with like, no, I'm just going to keep building this thing. And I have a lot of joy and value and my identity can be in that. And you have to learn to let go of what does success mean with this other thing. And that's that. And so like I want to answer it this way. If you decide to go for it, awesome. If you decide to not go for it because you've built a really good thing and also it doesn't fit in your original goal of equity value, but you have something that's generating a lot of cash flow, then like that might be the best thing for you and your family. That's totally fine. What I found is once your identity is in a certain thing, like for me, Divvy for a while was like, that was my identity. I was an entrepreneur, I was a co-founder, and it was this, high flying startup. When you lose it, and even when you sell, there's an element of like, well, now that's taken from me. Oh, shoot. Like, well, what am I? And the thing about a family is a family can ground you to like, well, you're a husband, you're a father, and there's a lot of other deeper meanings we can get into. But what is success? And it's like, well, success is growing, challenging yourself, connecting deeper with your kids and your spouse and growing like that side of your life. And so whether you took a swing and it didn't work and you went back to doing real estate, you took a swing. Whether you get to a point and you're like, hey, I don't want to take this swing, I'm going to keep doing this over here. Realize like that's just one component of your life versus all the other things that bring happiness and success. So don't let it define you either way, whether or not you swing or don't swing. A lot of people live a lot of amazing lives and they're not entrepreneurs, and that's great.
Yeah. No, I feel like my risk tolerance in the real estate realm is pretty high. I've lost a lot of money on deals. I've taken those swings, but I know I can always fall back to my active income. So it doesn't feel like it's going to like deter my lifestyle or anything. And I'm just going to lose an investment. Right. So it's an interesting perspective that I've been battling with for some time, but I'm that personality that I always feel like I have to grow and whatever that is. And it's done well for me in the real estate space, but anyways, yeah, but less about that. I do have another question for you, Alex.
Okay.
Now that you have had an exit and now that, if you didn't want to, you didn't have to work again if you didn't want to. You have young kids. How do you raise them in a way that goes against, I mean, it's probably impossible to avoid entitlement entirely, right? But
yes. Definitely thought about this. I don't have all the answers, but I'll give you some of the things I've come up with. One, there's a book called Entitlemania by Richard Watts, which I really like. And then, when I wrote Factory for Good, the book, dealing with prosperity, kind of post-exit, one of the sections is basically on relationships and how to raise children. So we put a decent amount of time in it. And we came up with stuff like the bank of mom and dad and how to connect your kids. But a few things. that we've been doing, and so far so good. But again, it's not a finished product, right? It's all right. My oldest is 15; she's in high school. The biggest thing I would say for kids, especially kids with families that have money. So my wife grew up without a ton of money. So when she wanted something, Mom, can I have? And Mom would say, no, we can't afford it. So it's like an easy no. It's frustrating, but it's an easy no. So eventually, like, you kind of stop asking because you know that, like, there's no money. My kids obviously, for the most part, know that there is money. Stuff like going to Costa Vida on a Friday night or a swig or whatever, right? Like, they know I can afford that.
Yeah.
And so I can't just be like, no, sorry, we can't afford it. It's like, no. And then they're like, well, you're saying no. And I'm like, yeah. And so that's like become this whole process of, my daughter actually had this happen to her this weekend. This kid was kind of giving her a hard time saying, why doesn't daddy just pay for your stuff? And she's like, well, my dad makes me work, and we have an agreement, the bank of mom and dad, which is she pays for half of, like, if she wants to go to a movie, if she wants to buy an article of clothing, she doesn't need, she pays for half. And so I want her to have a responsibility. I want her to be a part of the budget decisioning factor. Like, can I afford this? And I want her to run through the calculations of, is this worth it, or should I save it for this other thing? And then she has to learn how to earn money. So she has a job, like both my daughters have jobs across the street cleaning the dance studio. They have to babysit. They have to put money away. My daughter, when she turns 16 in 3 months, she's going to owe us a couple $100 a month for the family dealership, which is, it's my car. I'll pay for gas. I'll pay for insurance, but you owe me $250 a month for the right to use the vehicle. And it's just like these little things of, it won't be perfect, and our kids get certain opportunities that other kids don't. And, they obviously get to do some fun stuff, but we're just trying to teach them some sense of what mom and dad have is not what you have. And you have to go on your own journey of learning how to build, create, budget, and have responsibility into whatever you decide to do. And we're doing an okay job.
I'd say that sounds amazing.
Well, yeah. Sometimes they really complain and they really, really come at you, but you're like, hey, you got to learn how to do this. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think any income level, any healthy income level, that'll happen. Right?
That's the other thing I would say is, like, any healthy income level, which I would just say, like, anyone who's even middle class and, like, where we live here in Utah, really across America, you're going to get all these very similar. Like, I'll give you one of my favorite conversations to ask. And I interviewed a ton of wealthy people for the book because I was trying to navigate what they did well and what they did bad. And I said, okay, your daughter's 16. What are you going to do about a car? Because the answer is everyone's got to figure it out. Some people don't have money, so the kids have to go figure out how to buy a car. But most people have the ability to, like, get their kid into some version of a car. And it was fascinating to hear, like, well, we give it to them, but we ask them to get good grades, or, we do this, we do that. Like, a lot of different ways to slice the cake. The one thing that from the people that, quote, did it right, and when I say that, meaning, like, they felt like they had done it right and the kids were responding in a way that was positive, is that their kids had some skin in the game. Some skin in whether it was paying for gas and insurance, or if they crashed the car, or paying for half, or whatever it was, that the kid had some responsibility to this car. And it wasn't just mom and dad's and the credit card would always work. I think those are the easy, like, that's when you get in trouble.
Are they going to Lone Peak?
My kids are going to Lone Peak.
Okay. And that's the other side of the coin too. It's like, you can't control what other kids are given to, right? And Lone Peak, there's
I'll give you a good example. My daughter wanted this ghost t-shirt or ghost sweatshirt. It's just a sweatshirt. I don't get it, but, like, it's $80 for the sweatshirt. Might have been like $100. It was stupid. And all this is all the time.
Yeah.
All of my friends have it. And I'm like, I don't care that your friends' parents are buying them this stupid sweatshirt. I don't. If you want this sweatshirt, you're going to have to pay for it at least half. And, like, it's all the time. It's actually quite common of, like, phones and clothing and entertainment and food. A lot of kids have their parents' credit card, like, on their phone, just, Apple Pay. And I'm like,
insane.
That is a bad idea. So anyways.
So yeah, you can't control the others, but you can control what's in your household. And I commend you for that. I always used to say, like, one of my biggest worries about moving to Utah was, like the lack of culture, right? And I, coming from Seattle, being born and raised in Seattle, like a huge melting pot. There's pros and cons to that, of course.
Sure.
But like coming to a very, very a different culture, I was worried how my kids would respond to that. And talking to a bunch of people that I respect, probably similar to your book, of just like, not similar, but like my attempt
Sure.
at that interview process of how different people have handled that, is just, it all starts within your own home. So that's one thing that we're trying hard to do, is just love everyone no matter what walk of life they're at. And we're going to try our hardest, and it's not going to be perfect, but
The thing I would say, like, so my oldest is, she likes to talk, and so we can have a lot of these conversations, but she'll bring it up and she'll be like, yeah, I was with this girl and she was just buying stuff at the mall because she had her mom's credit card. And I was like, well, how'd that make you feel? You know, and you're like, so sometimes she's like, well, yeah, it makes me jealous that I can't do that. And, you know, there's all these conversations, and I'm like, the more we just talk about it, the more we're like, I can help her understand why mom and dad are doing a certain thing. Or she starts to be like, yeah, that kid is kind of spoiled because he's doing it this way. And I see why you're making me work. Like when she had to defend herself against this kid, he was like, well, why doesn't daddy just pay? Because, you know, Divvy wasn't quiet. Like there, you know, you can Google it. In fact, this actually happened the other day. My second youngest son, his 11-year-old, Googled me. And I knew it was coming at some point, but I was just surprised that it came from him. And he was starting to ask, like, what are shares of a business? How does that work? And I was like, I answered, and then he asked me another question. I was like, why are you asking? And he basically said, he goes, well, I Googled you. I said, okay. And I said, why'd you Google me? And he goes, well, I want to know how much money you have. Which honestly is like, it's an innocent, like, any kid wants to just kind of know. Like, I don't know. Like, he doesn't even know what it means, but he was just like, I was just good. And now, obviously, with AI, it's easier to drill into stuff. He didn't ask the right questions, but, you know, has a sense of what Divvy was sold for and stuff. And so I came home and I told Megan, I said, well, Megan, we're going to have a sit-down conversation. So the youngest was in bed, so he's asleep, and we had our two older girls, 15, 13, and 11. And we just sat down and said, hey, let's have a quick conversation as a family about mom and dad and how we took some risk, and some of it, you know, it worked out. And so we're in a financially good spot. And so my son's like, can you retire? And I was like, yeah, I can. And he's like, well, why don't you? And I was like, well, that's a good question. So I was able to then say, well, this is why I work. This is why I leave to go do these things. And then we were able to talk about like what we expect them to save and what we expect them to learn, and why we don't just give them everything. And, you know, how on some hands we're going to pay for this nice trip, but on the other hand, you're going to have to go have this job that pays you crap money because we want to learn it. And honestly, it wasn't a perfect conversation, and they're going to grow and make their mistakes. But I would say like it was one of the first like kind of family, let's have this conversation of what success looks like, and, you know, what that means to us, and ultimately what everyone's responsibility is. So yeah, it was an interesting, more candid convo that we've had in the past, but we'll see how it goes.
So this is still fresh.
It's all fresh. I mean, look, it's like, well, I'm doing this right. It's like you're doing it right for a month until your kid changes, and then it's different. But yeah, I mean, there's at least like, I think if you have conversations with your kids, they start to watch the world and see some of the same things of like, oh, that's what it means to work hard. That's what it means to have success. Or, you know, I hate when my kids will point out to someone, that guy's rich. I'm like, what the crap does that even mean? And, you know, like, you hate when someone says that about you, so why are you saying that about someone else? And there's, you know, just try to have the convos as much as we can.
I love it. Well, one last question before we let you go, Alex. This is a question I ask every guest. Utah is unique. I feel like the culture is absolutely amazing. And this is why I'll be in Utah for the rest of my life, is because they want to grow in the business world. They want to provide for their families, but I think a lot of us don't want to do that without sacrificing the family. What advice do you have for like young hustlers in that realm of trying to do both?
So my business partner's dad gave me this advice, and it might not be what you're expecting. So you've seen like in college, there's the circle of like sleep, good grades, and fun or whatever. You can only pick two. And in the business world, it's like family, success, and I'm missing one, God, like other, it's hard to do everything. And so people talk about work-life balance a lot, right? Like balance everything and keep it. And one thing he told me is like, balance doesn't mean equal. And not everything's equal all the time. And what he meant by that, and what I ended up, kind of living in my life, is there were times in my life where I was not at home every night from 5 to 10. There's a lot of times where like I'm gone in the morning when the kids were getting up, and then I get home at 6, and then I'm home from 6 to 9 with my kids. And then from 9 to 12 or 9 to 1 a.m., I'm working again. And it was just what I'm saying here is like the advice that was given to me that was powerful was be proactive in what you're doing, know what you're doing. And if you're making a sacrifice for a thing, make sure that you and your spouse are aligned on that. And that you do at least, have some connective tissue with your kids. But there are times that will require more of you, but that can switch. And so now I can spend less time at work. I still work, obviously, but I can spend more time coaching my kids or doing other things with my kids. And so things have a way of balancing themselves out long term, but don't feel guilty if like the thing you're doing right now does require for a season real effort. Just make sure that you and your spouse are aligned on that. And if you guys are connected and both in it together, you can do what is required to sometimes what it takes to get to that success without burning it all down. And the last thing with that same color is like, if your measure of success is just how much money you make or the car you drive, you're going to fail 100% of the time. I know people with millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and every one of them that has the metric of money wants more, and they're not and it always grows. You're going to fail. So just remember that like those metrics are great and they should be motivating, and hopefully there's a lot of fun, good things you want to do with them. But if your measure of success is like growing and challenging and building and being proud of what you've done, and then also just providing and then being like, a provider of the family and a good father and a good husband, then you can have success. And so good luck. It's all really complicated, but good luck.
I love it. Well, thanks for jumping on, Alex. It means a lot.
Hey, thanks for having me.